Hello mechanics. In this video I want to give you some insights into my latest project. The project is about pathfinding. More specifically pathfinding in static environments. The goals of the project are to create an algorithm for scanning and pathfinding in static custom-built structures. It is also a goal to explore possibilities on how to improve the pathfinding of NPCs in general. Let's not waste any more time and jump right into the algorithm. The algorithm is conceptually split into 5 steps. I will go over every step and explain what it is doing using a visualization. Let's start with this baseplate. Before the algorithm can start, it is required to define a bounding box in order to specify the area that the algorithm is allowed to explore. The first step of the algorithm itself is to calculate an upper bound of the structure that is being scanned. This is useful to limit the exploration of the unused space on top of the structure. The next step is the actual scanning of the structure. In this step, the algorithm finds all the positions that represent a point on the surface of the structure. This includes floors, walls and ceilings. In the next step, all hits are filtered out that do not match the criteria of a floor. A floor must be a surface. A floor must have a point of air on top of it. A floor must not have a hit or air under itself. This step also takes care of ceilings that are too close to the floor that is beneath it. In order to make pathfinding easier and reduce the amount of data that is required to store the navigation mesh, a different representation needs to be computed. This representation consists of convex polygons and links between those along shared edges. To make the computation of those polygons easier, I have decided to go with rectangle areas only and not attempt to calculate other convex shapes that might result in less areas being generated. As mentioned, the second part of the representation are links. After generating all the areas, they need to be connected. Due to the rectangular shape of every area, it is quite easy to check all the edges of it for neighboring areas. In order to get less links and get some space between, for example, walls and links, I decided to fuse up to a certain number of links. The generated graph is simple and consists of a small number of areas and links. Now I want to show some examples of what generated navigation meshes look like for different structures that are commonly found in creations. The first example shows that the algorithm is capable of handling slopes. The next example is another slope but with a steeper incline. As it is apparent from the navigation mesh, it is possible to have such elements in the structure. The last example are stairs. They have proven to be a bit trickier since they don't increase gradually like slopes do. However, it is no problem to have stairs. Before I move on to the optimizations, I want to show a simple example of the pathfinding that I have implemented. Here is the navigation mesh of the structure. Without a problem, the pathfinding algorithm is able to find a path from the inner room up to the top platform. As you might have guessed, such an algorithm is quite computationally intensive. In order to make this project feasible for larger structures, a lot of optimizations are required. I want to cover some of the optimizations that I have done so far and also some of that can be applied in the future. However, most of the optimizations are quite technical and have a lot to do with implementation of the algorithm. The first important optimization is the limitation of explorable space by requiring a point to be close to a hit. This way empty space is not explored. The second optimization that I want to talk about is the change of a naive implementation for calculating the distances which are required in the identification of the areas. In the first implementation, the whole field had to be iterated over in every step. The only interesting bit of the field were the changed cells. This means that only keeping track of changed cells reduces the number of total iterations of the algorithm until the end configuration has been reached. Other optimizations include switching index orders to be more efficient for caching or adding short circuits to reduce the time that the identification of the largest rectangle takes. Optimizations that can be tried in the future include a shape-based approach for exploring the space. Another approach includes reducing the data structure that is the result of the exploration algorithm. This would make storing meshes a viable option. Now that we have looked at the optimizations, let's talk about the limitations that apply to the algorithm and what can be done in the future. The first 2 limitations concern the linking of areas. At the moment, only walkable height differences are linked together. As soon as the distance would require a jump, the algorithm is not capable of identifying it. This also applies to gaps which could be walked or jumped over since the reach of the links is currently too small. Another limitation is the fact that the mesh is calculated ahead of time. This implies that the environment must stay exactly the same in order for the mesh to be accurate. Any modification has the potential to mislead the bots. However, in the future I am planning on exploring dynamic navigation systems further to bypass that issue at the cost of increased calculations during pathfinding. If you have any further questions or feedback, feel free to let me know in the comments or via Discord.